this time of year, it's always kind of interesting because as a preacher, this is the time when people visit. This is the time when people give you phone calls, because Christmas time, where everyone's supposed to be merry, is a time when a lot of times people are actually the most depressed. And so for me as a minister, this is a time, one of the busiest times of my year, because people who I don't even know will come and they'll call or they'll visit and they'll just say, you know what, it's the end of the year, I'm looking at my life, everyone's being jolly, but I'm just depressed. And I don't know what to do about it. You see, one of the things that I often hear during this time of year, and I'm talking with these people, is I listen for a while, and then I look them in the eyes, and then I'm asking the question, well, if you could change anything, what would it be? I mean, you're discontented, you're depressed, you're angry, you're hurting. If you could change anything, what would it be? And so a lot of times, this is when people start getting a whole array of different answers. You know, if only my health would be better, then I would be happy. Or if only God would give me some money and I could just not worry about money, then I would be happy. If only this with my kids or my wife or wherever it may be. I mean, I hear all these different situations. But one of the things that I try to clarify to people is that those are all circumstances. You see, one of the things, when I thought about that question, I thought to myself, if someone came up to me and asked me, what would you want to change? What would I say? I mean, I thought about a lot of the typical answers you hear, a lot of the worldly answers we hear, but then I thought about it, and the answer I came up with was, if I could change anything, I would change myself. Because here's the thing. You can change circumstances, but unless you're a new person, if you're a different person, those changes aren't going to make a difference. You know, I've actually met someone who's actually won the lottery before. And one of the things that I've actually read a lot about people who win the lottery is they end up worse off than when they first bought it. Now, a lot of people, if you ask them, hey, you're going to win the lottery tomorrow, and it actually happens, they would be ecstatic a lot of times. A lot of people would act that way. But here's the thing. That would be a huge change of circumstances. You could finally get that car that's running. You could finally buy that house that you were dreaming about. You could buy all that. But here's the thing. Unless you're a different kind of person, and you remain the same, change of circumstances aren't going to make a difference. I mean, that's why you look at Hollywood and why there's so many depressed people in Hollywood. I mean, you see famous people shaving their heads, doing drugs, whatever it may be. I mean, you say, you know what, you can change your circumstances and everything will be right. That's not true. The way to truly find true contentment and true joy in your life is by bringing true change to your life, to becoming a new person. Because even if changes, circumstances happen, they are not going to make a difference. Let's say your health did improve. Let's say you got the money. Let's say you got that job. Unless you're new in character, and you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be joyful. You're not going to make much of a difference. Just like someone who wins the lottery, great change of circumstances, but because they're not a different person, they usually lose it. It's because they're still that same greedy person buying lotto tickets. Don't buy lotto tickets. It's a bad investment. But I often think about that, and people often respond with that. When I'm telling them this, the next question they often ask, and I try to get them to ask this is, well, how do I change? And I say, I'm glad that you asked. Because if it was based on your own wisdom, your own power, your own strength, you're going to fail. But there's one named Jesus Christ who came into the world, came into the flesh, that he didn't just, during the Christmas time, we emphasize the manger scene, he didn't just remain a baby. He grew up and became a man. And in fact, he was the Son of Man. He was the Son of God. And he died on the cross to bear your sins and rise again. So that that sinful person that you are, that has destroyed your life because sin destroys lives, can be washed away. You can be forgiven of that so that you won't be eternally judged and condemned for the wrongdoing you've done in your life. Jesus rose from the grave. And so in the same way, you can rise to new life, not just for eternity, but when you come out of the watery grave of baptism, you come out a new person. That's one of the things that I try to help people understand. One of the things that people often do in this time of the year is they're looking for hope. They're looking for hope in their lives. What if I came up to you and I said, guess what? You have no hope to improve your life. You have no hope to change your life. You're going to remain the exact same person who you've always been and who you are today. How many of you would wake up the next day and say, yay! I get to be the same person. You see, one of the reasons why people often get so depressed is because they wake up and they realize that they've been the same person that they've always been. Make the same wrong decisions that they've always made. Commit the same sins that they've done. You see, these are the things that if you told someone you're going to remain the same person you're always going to be, that is one of the most devastating things that we can hear. But this is why when Christ came into the world, He brought hope. Because He brought in hope saying, that person who you used to be, that sinful person that separated themselves from God out of their own selfishness, that no longer has to be you. You read Galatians 5th chapter about the acts of the flesh and the acts of the Spirit, and you say, you know what? This is my old former way of life. I was a liar and sexually immoral. I was angry. I was divisive. I was hurtful. I was greedy. I was idolatrous. We look at that kind of person. We don't wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I'm proud of that person. I wish I could remain that person all the days of my life. We don't do that. We want to lay our heads down on our pillows and say, you know, I'm a new person. And that's why we see their hope. When we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, you know, love and joy and peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That's the kind of people that imitate God because that is God's character and nature. And we look at that and say, I can stop being me and I can start being like God. That I'm not as so angry as I used to be. I'm more patient. I'm not so self-centered. I'm loving. I'm not one who is just uncontrollably brutal towards people. I'm self-controlled. I'm generous. I'm kind. You see, that's the kind of people we wake up and say, I want to be like that. No one wakes up and says, I hope I'm Ebenezer Scrooge someday. What would Ebenezer Scrooge do? You know, we don't do that. We honor the people who make a difference. See, I look at my life, and I'm pretty hard on myself sometimes, and I look at my decisions, and I say, you know what? My sin has been what's ruined my life. If I want to change the circumstances, if I want to change me, then I need to look to God. And I want you to know that that hope is offered to each and every one of you. That you don't have to be the same old you. You don't have to be the Ebenezer Scrooge. You don't want me to appear 3 times out your night and say, hey, let's go evaluate your past. You know? But one of the things that we understand is God offers the hope to be a new person. A lot of times people at the end of the year reflect their life and they say, you know what, I want a second chance in life. Anyone ever want a second chance in life? You know, you won't necessarily be able to redeem your time. You won't be able to go back for some of the things you've done. You still have to suffer some of the consequences of your wrongdoing. That's true while you're on this earth. But the hope is you don't have to be the same person. One of the great messages of hope is that we look at our lives and we can say, you know what? God has completely changed our lives. We read in 1 Timothy how Paul is making known, guess what? I was the chief of sinners. I was the worst. I was a violent man. I was a persecutor of the church. I was a blasphemer. I was persecuting God. I was beating His bride, the church. I was killing men and women. I was doing all that bad stuff. But now grace has come upon me. And you know what? I look at that and say, you know what? What happened to Paul, and I look at him and I say, if he can change, then how many of us can change too?